Welcome to Ahn Korea, a video podcast produced by the Korea Economic Institute of America. Join us for in-depth conversations with experts and policymakers as we explore issues in Korea's economic and political relationship with the United States and how these issues may influence South Korea's regional strategies and its global relationships. I'm Scott Snyder, President and CEO of the Korea Economic Institute of America, and today I'm joined by Ahn Ho-Young, former ambassador of the Republic of Korea to the United States. Ahn Ho-Young is the chair professor of North Korean Studies at the Kyungnam University. Before this, he worked as the president of the University of North Korean Studies from 2018 to 2022. Prior to that, he was the Republic of Korea's ambassador to the United States between 2013 and 2017, and has also served as Deputy Minister for Trade, ambassador to the EU and Belgium, and first Vice Foreign Minister. Thank you for joining us today, Ambassador Ahn. Mm-hmm. We're very pleased to have you. And of course, this is a very good moment for us to have a conversation about the U.S. Korea relationship, because there are so many different things going on in the relationship, especially here in Washington. We're focused on the Trump administration getting organized. And of course, on the other side, we have a moment of political paralysis in South Korea. But you're familiar with that circumstance because you were here 8 years ago at a very similar moment following the impeachment of Park Geun-hye and the first Trump administration. So we're very grateful that you joined us to have a conversation about that. But also I wanted to talk to you about what you see based on your prior experience with Trump 1.0. And how do you think that Trump 2.0 is doing so far?
Well, between Trump 1.0 and then 2.0, I think there is important continuity. And then continuity would be the continuity of both two important slogans for Mr. Trump. That is to say, America first and make America great again. So that was an important slogan during Trump first administration, and continues to be so in the second administration. But the big difference is this time he came back with very specific policies to put those slogans into action. But at the same time, he came back with large number of people to implement those slogans. So he's better equipped with policies, with people. And I think that is the reason why he's so confident and then, tries to move ahead very quickly.
Well, certainly we all feel like things are moving very quickly in the first month.
Right.
And as far as I see the way it's shaping up, there are 3 T's in the relationship that could be very important in the U.S. Korea relationship going forward. The first one is tariffs. The second is transactionalism. And the third one is what I'm calling Trump centrism. And so I want to talk about each of those 3. As you know, President Trump has been wielding the tariff threat. It has not focused so far on Korea as a country, but it has focused on sectors in which Korea is potentially vulnerable. And of course, we know that the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Ahn Gun, is going to be here very shortly as well.
Must. Right.
How do you expect the tariff issue to play out? You were here at the time of the first administration, and of course that was also the negotiation of the KORUS FTA. But the key, I think, for Korea is to get some exceptions. How do you think that Korea is approaching that issue?
Well, this time, I very much hope that we'll be able to get exception as well. And then a 25% tariff on semiconductors, on automobiles, on steel, on aluminum. That, of course, would cause a lot of difficulty to the Korean economy. But at the same time, it will cause a lot of difficulty for the United States as well. Consumers' prices will go up. Business community costs will go up. So U.S. economy will also suffer. So I think so far as that is not what I say. That's what U.S. economists say, mainstream economists say. So I very much hope that, there will be renewed thinking about what this issue should be handled like in the days to come. And in the meantime, I think, so far as Korea is concerned, then definitely we must try to get some exceptions That's for sure.
What about the broader U.S. Korea relationship and the use of tariffs? And of course, we know that there's also a focus on the merchandise trade balance. What is Korea's best strategy for grappling with those challenges?
Well, I just try to look upon Korea-U.S. relationship in a very broad sense. And I think, what we should be trying to achieve between Korea and United States under President Trump would be letting United States understand that we can truly have win-win relationship between Korea and United States. For security, for economy, for technology, whatever the issue may be, we can have truly win-win relationship between Korea and the United States. So when it comes to security, what does President Trump want? There is peace through strength. And where does it get strength? And then Korea, in fact, has a lot to offer when strength is concerned, in the sense that Korea spends 2.8% of GDP for defense, which is highest among major allies of the United States. And Korea, in fact, has fifth strongest conventional military capability in the whole world. So at the same time, Korea has a proven defense industry capability. All of them put together, Korea has a lot to contribute to the United States when United States wants to have peace through strength. So there is win-win in the security sector. And when it comes to economy, what does President Trump want? He wants to increase jobs in the manufacturing sector. And then let's talk about which country has the best manufacturing capability for the time being. Korea, when it comes to semiconductors, batteries, nuclear reactors, shipbuilding, you name it. Korea is number one with respect to all those manufacturing sector. And then Korea, in fact, has been investing heavily in the United States for the past 8 years, $180 billion, employing 800,000 people, providing high-paying jobs, training those workers. And that, in fact, is something which can be further facilitated during President Trump's time, win-win relationship between Korea and United States. So that's the broad picture. And tariffs, it doesn't help. Mm-hmm. So that I think is the overall, picture against which we should be engaging American, representatives.
Okay. So that's a very effective reframing in the context of peace through strength. It makes me think that you're just wanting to substitute the A, make the alliance great again, rather than make America great again. One of the big challenges, I think, related
Scott,
to yes,
Scott. That's very, very interesting. You say MAGA, that's make alliance great again. That's what acting President Che said. In fact, he said, MAGA, so far as Korea is concerned, it is make alliance great again.
Okay. Well, that's a very sensible approach, but there is one way in which I think President Trump peculiarly challenges that, even though the peace through strength framework is his framework, and that is his penchant for transactionalism. And in particular, just watching the events in Europe and the shockwaves and the doubts related to the credibility of the U.S. commitment to the security of NATO. I mean, even the new German prime minister is raising questions about the relationship with the U.S. We have President Macron here this week, and also Prime Minister Starmer. What are the reverberations for South Korea as related to the credibility, perceptions of the credibility of the U.S.-Korea alliance?
When new Trump administration started, many Korean citizens, they had concern about what the new administration's policy will be like with respect to North Korean nuclear issue. And then the concern was President Trump may go for making a deal with Kim Jong-un, which in fact could be delinking the strategic interests of United States and Korea. That was the big concern. And very early on, what we began to hear from Washington is, no, that's not what we are planning to do. Well, we in fact were pursuing the nuclearization of North Korea in the first term. That will continue to be our objective in the second term as well. And then in order to achieve that, we will continue with implementation of sanctions. And at the same time, we will continue our military cooperation with Korea and Japan. So they, in fact, are something we have been hearing in the past 1 month. And they, for the time being, are having a very important, reassuring impact upon Korean observation of how new government is working in Washington, D.C. But at the same time, this kind of cleavage in the way a new administration is approaching allies in Europe and allies in Indo-Pacific, that definitely is being observed in Korea as well. And we very much hope that, well, the alliance, U.S. alliance, the new team would in fact try to appreciate the importance of the allies overall.
So I imagine that could be a message that the South Korean president could bring to Washington once South Korea's political paralysis has been resolved. And this gets me to my third T of Trump centrism. What do you think is the best strategy for a South Korean president as you watch the way in which other leaders have engaged with President Trump on the global stage?
Well, Scott, from Asia, Indo-Pacific, so far we had Prime Minister Ishiba and Prime Minister Modi coming to visit Washington, D.C. And my observation has been they came well prepared. And when it comes to Prime Minister Ishiba, then I think there were several important messages that Prime Minister Ishiba came with. Number one, we will continue to strengthen our defense capability up to 2% of GDP, right? Second, we in fact will continue to buy more products coming from United States. For example, LNGs. We will try to buy more LNGs from the United States. And third, we will continue to invest heavily in the United States. For the past 5 years, we in fact were the biggest investors in the United States, and we will continue to invest more in the United States. So those were the kind of important, say elements in the package that Prime Minister Ishiba came with. And I think most probably new Korean president would have to do the same thing. And when it comes to the first point, that is to say what we can do for, security relationship with the United States. As I already said, in Japan, they are talking about 2%, right? In Korea, we already spent 2.8%. And then when it comes to conventional military capability, we have very similar standing between Korea and Japan. But for the time being, we are one ranking ahead of Japan when it comes to conventional military capability. When it comes to the second point, that is to say, getting more products from Japan, and then to be more specific about LNG, Japan is getting $2 billion worth of LNG for the time being. Korea is getting $1.8 billion LNG from the United States for the time being. So it is almost the same amount of LNG we are getting. Japan and Korea, we are getting almost the same amount of LNG we are getting from United States. But Scott, think about it in the sense that when it comes to population of Japan, it is 2.5% larger than South Korea. So by population, we are number one in the import of, LNG. But at the same time, LNG, agriculture products, I'm reminded of an anecdote which goes back to earlier days of my ambassadorship here in Washington, D.C. So in 2013, the Republican Party whip was Kevin McCarthy. He invited me to his constituency, which was in Bakersfield in California, which is very agricultural constituency. So there, one of the things I did was to meet with members of Chamber of Commerce. And because of it is Bakersfield, large number of members of Chamber of Commerce were farmers. So they began to talk. And then one farmer said, well, after FTA between Korea and United States, my export of citrus, it went up 40%. The next gentleman said, well, again, after the FTA, my export of macadamia nuts, it went up 40%. On and on and on. Everybody was happy about how much the agricultural products they were selling to Korea. So much so, Kevin, he stopped them. And then he said, well, he's Korea's ambassador. You are supposed to make complaints. You are making all compliments. You are not supposed to do that. And what I said was that, well, I used to work on trade issues from time to time. And then there is a saying among trade diplomats, which is, there are no happy farmers anywhere in the world. Today, I'm finally meeting with happy farmers. Mm-hmm. And then all of them, of course, were broke into big laughter. But that's truly how I felt. That is to say, FTA works. Korea-US FTA works. So that's another reason why I think United States must think again about tariffs. But third point about investment, well, Korea, in fact, last year was the biggest investor in the United States. Not only big in number, but at the same time, well-paying investor. Because Korea, during my time, I do not know what the situation is now. During my time, Korea was number one highest-paying businesses, foreign businesses in the United States. No, businesses coming from Indo-Pacific in the United States. So well-paying jobs, but at the same time, it is not just number of money, but at the same time, the training, we should be thinking about the training which is provided by Korean manufacturers, top-notch manufacturers. They are training American workers and let them understand the first-rate technology of manufacturing sector. So there is a lot of things which, in fact, as I already said, which in fact can go in the way of win-win between Korea and United States. And that, I think, is the message the new president must bring with him when he meets with President Trump.
Okay, that's great. I want to shift you away from trade to geopolitics, and especially the region. And I think the top question that I have to ask is, what do you think about the prospects for renewed Summitry between Trump and Kim Jong-un? How will South Korea respond to that?
Well, Scott, you know it, I know it, in the sense that there are three important elements with which, in our approach to North Korean nuclear issue. One, diplomacy. Two, sanction. Three, deterrence. For the time being, diplomacy doesn't work. So that, in fact, is the reason why we must be emphasizing on sanction, importance of sanction and importance of deterrence. And deterrence, among those three elements, I think deterrence is the most important one. Why? Because after Hanoi incident of 2019, North Korea has been doubling down, tripling down in the development of nuclear weapons and missiles. And then because of it, there is a real threat of North Korean, nuclear weapons. So in order to respond to that, this, in fact, is the time when we must emphasizing on how to strengthen the extended deterrence. And then for that reason, NCG process, in my mind, is something the new president team must declare that new team supports NCG process as well. Why? Because deterrence is all the more important today, which doesn't mean diplomacy is not important. I think if there is a chance, there is all the reason why we should go for this diplomacy. And for the time being, Pyongyang doesn't seem to be interested in diplomacy for one reason and another. But who knows? Pyongyang could be changing. And then when it comes, then of course we must try to take best advantage of that. One big, caution, caveat that I should be sharing with you would be, United States must keep Korea and Japan in the loop. And why? Because, if there is any progress in the diplomatic approach with North Korea, then the country which will be affected most closely, most deeply, most intensely, it will be South Korea, of course, right? And then there is another reason why Mr. Trump could get something out of closely engaging with Korea, South Korea, which is South Korea, which has best understanding of North Korean thinking, right? So there is all the more reason why there should be a close engagement between United States and Korea. The other day, when Prime Minister Ishiba was coming to visit Washington, then there was the high-ranking White House official having a conversation with the news media, which they always do. And then I read that, verbatim record of the conversation he had with all members of the news media. And one of the things this gentleman said was, well, if there is diplomacy, negotiation with North Korea, we will move in lockstep with Korea and Japan. That's what I read in the verbatim record, and I really appreciated it. And I very much hope that will be, it is not just what is said. I hope it will be something which will be implemented.
Let me also move you towards the issue of whether or not the next South Korean government will sustain deep coordination with the United States on policy toward China. That's obviously an area of focus for the Trump administration. How do you see that playing out in the U.S.-South Korea relationship?
Well, let us just think about the bilateral relations between Korea and China, right? And then China, in fact, is inundating Korean market with cheap products, right? And China is luring Korean engineers in semiconductors, engineers in batteries, right? And China is violating our EEZ and our, say, something called air defense identification zone all the time, getting worse and worse, right? So we have our own problems with China, right? So, well, there in fact would be a lot of convergence in the problems United States has with China and problems we have with China. So I think there is a good, say, a room through which we could be working with United States in that area as well.
Okay. And then final question that I want to ask you is about the future of U.S., Japan, South Korea trilateralism. I know that this has been a focus at some meetings that you've been at recently. Mm-hmm. And so I'd just be interested in whether you think that the trilateral relationship is going to be able to sustain itself in the context of the multiple political transitions that are going on in each of those three countries.
When Mr. Trump was inaugurated on January 20th, there were two issues I was very closely following. One was North Korean nuclear issue. What Trump team's policy will be like on the North Korean nuclear issue. And as I already told you, for the time being, so far, so good on the North Korean nuclear issue. And second issue I tried to closely follow was what new team's position will be on trilateral partnership among Korea, Japan, and United States. And again, so far, very positive messages. I'm hearing very positive messages coming from the new Trump team. So Secretary of State Rubio, as well as Mr. Waltz, National Security Advisor, they had very positive things to say about trilateral partnership. And when Prime Minister Ishiba came, then again, between Prime Minister Ishiba and then President Trump, they again made very positive comments about the trilateral partnership. And I very much hope that when new president is elected in Korea, then he or she would also understand the importance of trilateral partnership because we share so much common interests. And we live in a very tough neighborhood. And then there is all the more reason why we should be further strengthening trilateral partnership. So we have a message coming from President Trump. We have a message coming from Prime Minister Ishiba. And I very much hope that the new president in Korea or Mr. Yoon, when he comes back, they will support the trilateral partnership as well.
Okay. Well, Ambassador Ahn, I just want to thank you for this conversation. I feel like we're just getting started, and yet we're at the point where we have to end. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. And thank you for tuning into this episode of Eye on Korea. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like the podcast, subscribe so you won't miss the next one, and leave a review to help others discover the show. Follow the Korea Economic Institute of America on social media or visit keia.org for more resources, events, and expert analysis on Korea. We'll see you next time on Eye on Korea.